Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning from me as well. My name is Ali Aslan. I'm an international TV presenter and journalist based both in Berlin and Istanbul. And I couldn't be more delighted to be back here at CAMCA. To some of you, you might remember I was with you last year in Washington, D.C., my first time. This is my second time here in Almaty. Thank you so much to CAMCA, to the Rumsfeld Foundation, to everyone involved for having me back. And I couldn't be more delighted to moderate this very timely and important session that we're having now once we get the microphone fixed. Ladies and gentlemen, to my left is somebody whom I certainly don't need to introduce in this part of the world or even beyond. He's, of course, the first deputy chairman of the Senate of Oliy Majlis of the Republic of Uzbekistan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Sodyq Safoev. Senator, it's wonderful to have you with us. From what I understand, this is by no means your first time at CAMCA. You were with this group back in Baku. You were with this group in Tashkent, now here in Almaty. So you know that this is a very intriguing group. This is a very interesting group full of leaders or potential and future leaders. As somebody who's at the forefront of policy making in your country, I just want to find out and ask you the concept of leadership. What does it mean to be a leader to you, especially when you're in a room like this with young people?
First of all, thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'd like to start with congratulating CAMCA with 15th anniversary. I think it's quite an amazing job done in such a short period of time. I'd like also express again appreciation to Fred Starr and all the team of CAMCA. I think that, thank you. You know, I'm old enough and I remember the time when only a few scholars worldwide were concentrated on Central Asia. Maybe we can remember Allwards from Colombia, right? Central Asian Survey, or to Ali from Turkey. That's it. Today, Central Asia is in the focus of academic research, analytical studies, and we should give a credit to Fred Starr for that. His tireless efforts to bring attention of the world to the importance of Central Asia, which now is regaining its historical role, being real important hub for 4 major macro sub-regions of Eurasia is obvious for us today. We all today recognize that Central Asia can play a crucial role, both geopolitically and geoeconomically, and likewise unstable, and disunited Central Asia might cause a real problem for the whole world. So it's a region of global importance. I used once the word United Central Asia, and I think that the project of CAMCA was extremely important for nourishing this idea of united, cooperating, maybe in the future integrated Central Asia. And I think that today we have here almost 300 young, some of them, as Fred said, not too young, people who are supposed to be leaders. And they are already leaders. Again, I'm going to quote Fred Starr when he said that there are people who already set up universities, who are running successful business, providing very effective consultative job for them. They're already leaders. And I think that the most important mission of CAMCA was to bring them together, to create network, and to establish some kind of a infrastructure for Central Asian South Caucasus cooperation, which will have its fruits, already having a fruit, and will have even further fruits. And I think that another important point is that we should now concentrate on new qualitative level of the CAMCA, and it's about bringing more vision. Leader is a vision. It's unwavered principles and values. For that, we should understand that every person here should not only be an expert in his narrow field, but have a broader understanding of context of contemporary world and role of Central Asia, and then the role of his own business and its community. Only this is the best way to be effective leader.
You're talking about leadership, we're talking about Central Asia, obviously. If you're looking around the many countries in the region, where do you see leadership right now, at the moment, currently? Which country, which figure is standing out for you?
Let me frankly share with you my point. Today, one of the most important deficits of contemporary world is an absence of leadership. We remember the time when there were countries, societies, who created, let's say, standard, who, without any coercion, other societies were striving to resemble, to repeat. We remember the time when in every society, especially in the great countries, there were congressmen, senators, people of great magnitude, caliber, saying American expression, who might come and fill a room being there. Today, I think that it's an interesting feature of contemporary world that is in a diminishing or the almost absence of such kind of a leadership. First of all, we should understand that leadership is not equal to the imposing something or forcing someone to join, coercing, cajoling. Leadership is about creating ideas or programs which themselves are luring people. They're inspiring nations and people, and that's why they might lead. And I think that today in Central Asia, we now might see new regional leadership emerging. Before, we might talk about the global leadership, but today we observing, to my mind, in every region, emergence of the regional leadership. And here I'd like to tell that, to point out, to my mind, very important point. The old considerations about who is a leader in Central Asia is a relict of old way of thinking. Central Asia historically preordained to be united and to survive and prosper together. Each country has its own national interest, prosperity of all neighbors. Only together we might address the challenges of contemporary world. And only together we might capitalize the comparative advantages of Central Asia. That's why I think that progress in Central Asia, by no means it's a competition. Who is first, who is the second, who is more effective. Only by using synergy of all countries, we might achieve Central Asia and South Caucasus. And by the way, it's very important now not to limit our vision to Central Asia. Central Asia today has a broader context. South Caucasus, by all means today, might be seen as an organic part of this sub-region, not a macro region. Afghanistan, clearly it's a part of Central Asia. And that's why today we might see that we should all together, to think over about the new ideas for next steps in Central Asian progress. What might preordain and predestine the success of this region, and how it might regain its brilliant glory which it had in medieval times.
And that, if I understand it correctly, can only be done together in cooperation. Clearly, you don't believe in one strong country in Central Asia, one strong leader dominating or standing out. Quite on the contrary, it is about regional cooperation in Central Asia, as you say. Actually, we're going to have a panel right afterwards that's going to pick up on this particular topic. But your country, of course, plays a critical role in that regard, not only because it is the most populous country in Central Asia, but also because of the reforms initiated by President Mirziyoyev since he took over in 2016. Clearly, that has led to improved relations with its neighbors. Could you perhaps briefly say concretely, what are the steps, what are the reforms that your administration, that your president has undertaken in order to foster and promote this regional cooperation that you speak of?
I think that the very fact that Uzbekistan has been transformed domestically, it was a factor for more stable and sustainable development in Central Asia as a whole. As you correctly said, geography of Uzbekistan, its position as the most populous country in Central Asia, preordains its role in this region. And the fact that Uzbekistan became more democratic, more market-oriented, more open, influenced the development of Central Asia as a whole. You know, even the fact that today one of the top, maybe most important achievement in Uzbekistan, which was a result of the reforms embarked in 2016 by the leadership of President Mirziyoyev, was completely different vision of human rights. First time in our history, society was awakened by reforms. It started to be engaged to the decision-making process, to the oversighting the government in all levels, and demanding. It's very challenging. Not everybody is pleased with this fact of more aggressive media, more aggressive civil society, but it's absolutely necessary for development of this country. And I think it influenced the development in other Central Asian countries as well. Say, from another point of view, the economic development in Uzbekistan. It's interesting, Ali, you know, that during the Reformation, normally, economy falls. We all know that. We remember then after collapse of Soviet Union, during the Reformation, the economy of many countries even squeezed for 2 times or 3 times. But in Uzbekistan, it grew for 25% during the last 6 years. And I think there are 3 factors. First, privatization and releasing the creative capacity of medium and small business. During these years, the number of small and medium businesses in Uzbekistan increased 4 times. Today, 2 million people in Uzbekistan are in small and medium business. Recently, in the Senate, we had a hearing asking central bank to report us about the situation in the economy, and I was struck with the fact that according to the report, now there are almost 30,000 millionaires among the small and medium business in Uzbekistan, having their accounts in Uzbek banks. I would say if Uzbek banks will be more efficient and more modernized, maybe the number of these millionaires will be even more, bigger than 30,000. And more than 200,000 of people with a 100 plus US dollars account in their banking system. Maybe it's not as impressive figures for more developed countries, but for Uzbekistan, to having this middle class, having assets, growing assets, it's something not only economically, but politically as well. Second, more openness to the foreign investments. Geography is expanding. More than 51 countries now are investing to Uzbekistan. When we started in 2016, the annual volume of foreign investments flowing to Uzbekistan was around 2.4 billion US dollars annually. Today is close to the 12 million, for more than 4 times increasing. So I think that it was another And a third very important dimension was concentration of the regional trade. Trade with our immediate partners like Kazakhstan and other 4 countries of Central Asia, including, by the way, Afghanistan as well. So I think that reforms in Uzbekistan had an impact. And coming to the foreign policy reform, we are talking about the renewed foreign policy of Uzbekistan. By the way, today, Ambassador Norov is here with us and he can confirm we're working on a new concept of foreign policy of Uzbekistan, which must reflect the new realities of contemporary world. We think that Uzbek foreign policy became more open to all dimensions and more diversified, which is very important. Keeping in mind importance of our strategic partnership with our traditional partners, now country and other Central Asian countries looking to the new destinations, South Asia, Middle East, Arab countries, Eastern Europe. Recently we opened up the embassy in Budapest. A month ago I was in Stockholm and opened up the embassy in Stockholm, Sweden for covering Scandinavia. So Central Asia looking for new options, expanding its horizon.
Yeah. It's very clear listening to you how much you treasure the opening up reform process that your country has undertaken for the last few years. You've talked about the many achievements and the improvement to the lives of the Uzbek people, as well as the improvement then in hindsight in the foreign policy arena. But since we're amongst friends, what are some of the reforms where you think you did not achieve yet your goal? Where do you still see some room for improvement?
If you would be more careful listening to me, you should already notice that I criticize the Uzbek banks for not being modernized enough. I can continue this line and say that one of the main failures so far of the reform process was, let's say, we were not very good in creating capital market in Uzbekistan. It's absolutely important for the modern economy. We all understand and realize that, but it's still in a very infancy or in an embryonal stage of development in Uzbekistan. Having said that, I should tell that it's kind of an integral factor which reflects the, let's say, not failures, but slow reforming process in other spheres, like privatization. Without the full-fledged and genuine privatization, you never can get capital market. Deregulation of the financial sector. So I think that still there are a lot should be done ahead, and it's first of all binded to the most crucial dimension of reforms: capacity building. You cannot implement full-fledged political and economic modernization using old system and old guard. There must be critical mass of people with new way of thinking, new vision, and it cannot be done like this one. You should spend years and years for that. A lot has been done. The number of universities doubled in Uzbekistan. We try to invest more and more. The number of foreign universities opening campus in Uzbekistan tripled, but still it's not enough. We think it should, for a country with almost 40 million population like Uzbekistan, it's not enough. We should continue to work on that.
As somebody, as a journalist who's based both in Berlin and Istanbul, I can confirm that Uzbekistan, which prior perhaps was not so much in the news, is now getting more play. One item that has gotten quite a bit of coverage was President Mirziyoyev's calling for a snap poll on July 9th, which could leave him in power until 2040. And this election would follow the April 30 referendum, of course, that amended your country's constitution, extended future terms to 7 years. What is the reasoning behind this?
First of all, it's two separate questions. First of all, why we have needed new or renewed constitution. You know, phase 1.0 of our reform is over. It was about basic issues, some fundamental steps to be done, where almost consensus exists in the society. Convertibility, human rights, more openness, etc. Now it's time for 2.0 stage of reform, which will be completely different and more complicated, more challenging. And it will be about the transformation of society, applying the good governance system, democratization of administrative system on all levels, growing role of parliament, not only in the center, but in the municipal level as well, which is essential for creating grassroots democracy, and for creating better opportunity for full-fledged privatization. At last, now, with this constitution, we have an understanding that land is capital. Land might be privatized and considered as in a private ownership. You know, we should not underestimate the impact of this step. So new constitution is about the deepening reform, even more, not only reform, it's about political and economic modernization of this country. Let me point one or more view. Today we have living in a challenging world. There is a lot of tendencies worldwide. We're living in a so-called polycrisis world. You know this expression, which is pretty new one. It means simultaneous occurrence of several crises which might undermine stability and sustainable development of every society. In this case, only way to survive and to be competitive is modernization. But modernization needs its legal foundation, new system of law and new regulations of every sphere of society. And constitution is about that. And again, constitution means that every citizen of Uzbekistan might run for presidency, and on the next month, on the 9th of July, we will have, let's say, the new president will be elected, and President Mirziyoyev, who had a right to run country for next 3 years, voluntarily abandoned these 3 years, and said, new constitution provides us with new authority, new capacity, new portfolio, and any new president who will be must be authorized by people to exercise new authorities. So we hope that new elections will be democratic. Now 4 candidates are running for that. Each of them has their own programs, and it's up to the people of country to select which way they will choose.
You have correctly stated, of course, that we do live in a world where numerous crises are happening at the same time. For those wondering why I have not raised the war in Ukraine yet, it is because we will have a separate panel on the geopolitical developments in Central Asia, where the senator has gracefully accepted to be back on stage again. So at the risk of being repetitive, I will spare the Ukraine and Russia related questions for the time being. But there's one topic that will be picked up later on also in this program. There's going to be a book presentation on the interaction between state and religion. And Uzbekistan, in this particular aspect, poses an interesting model. A lot of countries are looking, a lot of Muslim countries and beyond are looking towards your model. Because if your country succeeds in safeguarding secularism while promoting tolerant and traditional religious institutions, that could serve as a model beyond your country as well. How much emphasis and thought is being placed on this particular subject matter in your country?
Perhaps it's one of the most difficult questions you raised. mistake in this field might devastate the society. We all understand the importance of that, especially in Uzbekistan, countries like Uzbekistan. Let me dare to say that Uzbekistan not only one of many countries with predominant Muslim population. It's historically one of the center of Islamic culture, philosophy, and civilization. 2 weeks ago, I was in Saudi, and during my visit to Medina, Mecca, and Riyadh, everybody who recognized that I'm coming from Uzbekistan immediately reacted that you are coming from the land of Imam Bukhari. It's a holy land for us. So with your origin, you know, with such names like Imam Naqshbandi or Maturidi, it means a lot. And in Uzbekistan, Islam always played a crucial role. The main question, and we talked about that in Baku, if you remember, 5 years ago, the main contradiction is how to harmonize modernization, more democracy, with the increasing role of Islam in our society. It's not easy, it should not be simplified. It's an uneasy question. We're trying to find equilibrium of interests. When we 2 years ago adopted in Parliament new law on religious freedom, after the 2 years of the long consideration, debates involving the foreign experts, including from United States and other countries, we were happy. But then we were criticized, severely criticized, from two sides within our society. First, one said, you're opening up the way for gripping Talibanization of the country. It's too liberal law, and you should stop it. We need to go back to the tough regulation of this side. Another part criticized us for still keeping some reservations, some regulations in regard with proselytism, missionary activity, etc., some regulations. And then I realized that we were right. If we've been criticized from two sides, it means that we're doing something correct. However, among the main achievements of renewed constitution, I think that it's first time stated firmly that Uzbekistan is building secular state, democratic secular state, and as you correctly said, this is kind of might be considered as an example for other countries. At the same time, the appreciation of the importance of Islam is growing as well. During Soviet times, 70 years, less than 100 persons were allowed to go to make a pilgrimage to Hajj to Mecca. This year, now, these days, 15,000 Uzbeks are going to Saudi for implementing their duty. Several universities, madrasas opened up for bringing idea of enlightened Islam. Islam with book, Islam of tolerance. And still a lot of rocks ahead. We understand that we cannot applaud ourselves and to say that's enough. I think that we should all work together. And maybe for CAMCA guys, it's also one of the subjects to be discussed. Without bragging, without simplifying this issue, we should think over how we might, when I told about the leadership and the values, this is about values, with whom we are, what kind of society we're building. This is about understanding our own identity. And by the way, and I'd like to invite you also to think over about that. We're talking today not only about the identity of Kazakhs, Uzbeks, we're talking about identity of Central Asia, regional identity. Some people are disagree with me, criticizing when I always emphasizing the importance of Central Asian identity. What about Tajiks? They are not Turkic-speaking people, but it's not about the linguistic identity. It's different. Let's think over, and maybe it's a subject for our next discussion, and I would appreciate insights from the floor today about this as well.
Yeah, indeed. The panel that you are referring to will follow right after this discussion, but we have approximately 10, 12 minutes left, and I would like to give you the floor now. And if you have questions or want to follow up on anything that you have heard up until now.
Or comments.
Or comments, of course. This would be a good time. I think we have microphones in the room. So if you want to chime in, please let me know, raise your hands, and I'll bring you in. It seems that looking at the audience, you probably have already answered many of the questions that people had on their minds. But if you do come in. Otherwise, Senator, let me ask you, since we are here in a room of very diverse, with very diverse young leaders here, what advice, as somebody who is already leading the fate and shaping the fate and policies in your country at the highest level, each and every one of the individuals here in the room, and each and every one, of course, in their respective fields, what piece of advice do you have for them in their respective work, also keeping in mind the mission and the plea that you have for Central Asian identity?
Instead of responding to a question, may I quote someone?
Of course.
No, it's going to be a long quote. Please excuse me for that. But taking into account that we're among the most sophisticated and well-prepared audience who must disseminate the ideals, I'd like to quote Victor Hugo from Miserables. I will quote in both English and Russian. I have in Uzbek as well this quote, but I think that I will reserve it to my Uzbek friends and I will quote them later. Let me start with the Russian quotes. And I think that I'm addressing to the CAMCA guys with these words of Victor Hugo. Слушайте меня, философы, обучайте, разъясняйте, просвещайте, мыслите вслух, говорите во всеуслышание, бодрые духом, действуйте открыто, при блеске дня, братайтесь с площадями, возвещайте благую весть, щедро одоляйте букварями, провозглашайте права человека, пойте марсельезы, пробуждайте энтузиазм, срывайте зеленые ветки с дубов, обратите идеи в вихрь. Толпу можно возвысить. Сумеем же извлечь пользу из той неукротимой бури, какой в иной минут раздражается, бушует и шумит мысль и нравственное чувство людей. Босые ноги, голые руки, лохмотья, невежество, униженность, темнота – все это может быть направлено на завоевание великих идеалов. Now it's in English. Go on, philosophers. Teach, enlighten, kindle, think aloud, speak up, run joyfully toward the broad daylight, fraternize in the public squares, announce the glad tidings, lavish your alphabets, proclaim human rights, sing your Marseillaises, sow enthusiasm, tear off green branches from the oak trees, make thoughtful a whirlwind. The multitude can be sublimated. Let us learn to avail ourselves of this vast conflagration of principles and virtues, which occasionally sparkles, bursts, and shatters. These bare feet, these naked arms, these rags, these shades of ignorance, depths of despair, the gloom can be used for the conquest of the ideal. Look through the medium of the people, and you will discern the truth. This lowly sand that you trample underfoot, if you throw it into furnace and let it melt and seethe, will become sparkling crystal. And thanks to such as this, Galileo and Newton will discover the stars. It's good. So, my friends, not being heard is no reason for silence. When time of some ideas will come, any army can stop it. It's time for you to share ideas, to share some programs, and to enlighten all of us. Thank you. There is a question, if I'm not mistaken.
I like how no one raised their hands, and now with 5 minutes left, there are 7 people. But
I think that we have some time.
yes, yes. We'll make that happen. We'll make magic happen here on stage. Can we get them?
It's not to me, it's to Victor Hugo. He inspired.
Look, the quote unlocked the potential that you kept
Exactly.
talking about. So here we are.
Yeah,
Go
hi.
ahead, please.
Yeah, my name is Javier Piedra. I'm with Asia Times. Javier Piedra with Asia Times. I have a question with respect to privatization. You mentioned that's a priority. And privatization, of course, is good because efficiency is better than inefficiency, let's say. But do you see a danger in over-privatization, i.e. a concentration of economic power in the hands of a few people to the detriment of overall society? Because this is something that is very visible in many countries around the world, including in my own.
Senator, before you answer, why don't we collect a couple of questions, because that will be the most efficient way. Otherwise, we'll never get through. So privatization is the first question. Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Zirnar Zakeshev. I just graduated from Harvard Kennedy School. I'm officially unemployed. Just before going actually to my question, I just wanted to announce, before I totally forget, at Harvard Kennedy School, there is a scholarship called Nurlan Kaparov Graduate Scholarship, which is basically the only scholarship that is at the Harvard level among the CAMCA countries. That actually benefits all Central Asian countries. So I would encourage everyone to, to really disseminate this information. That scholarship is not only for Kazakhs, but all Central Asian countries, Nurlan Kaparov Scholarship. I personally benefited from this. So I would like all other countries from Central Asia to benefit. Now, my question is rather blunt. Ambassador, Your Excellency, I want to actually have your view about the trust building among, let's say, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. With new Uzbekistan and with new Kazakhstan, we want to see a new level of trust building and collaboration. And I'll give you a case with which I was disappointed. I was working in Dubai in an international consulting firm, and I was actually sharing a case with some other Uzbek colleagues. And when we were advising the Kazakh government and Ukrainian government and other governments, it was totally fine when we were actually in management consulting. But when we started advising the Uzbek government, they accepted the proposal. They wanted to work with us because it's an international consulting firm, but with one caveat. I got the message as director for Eurasia, saying, oh, please come, work with us, we want your consultancy, but please don't send Kazakhs. So basically, this old-fashioned view of, oh, Uzbeks, we don't want to learn from Kazakhs. Oh, Kazakhs, we don't want to learn from Uzbeks. I think it's in a very old-fashioned way of looking at, and I think without, I want to hear your view about how do we dismantle this stereotype and really progress in terms of trust building and collaboration. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. We had a couple more hands up. Let's bring them in quickly. But my plea would be perhaps to keep the questions as brief as possible so that we can get everyone in. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Hikmat Abdurrahmanov, entrepreneur from Uzbekistan. Senator Safoev was answering to the question of leadership, and he stated that currently we observe lack of strong leaders, or leaders, as you said, who fill the room with their presence. I just want to say that I think you are being modest because your presence really filled the room. But my question would be, if there is a selection of whether having strong leaders or versus having strong institutions, which would you choose? And don't you think that strong leaders might actually press down strong institutions?
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, is your question still valid or has it been answered?
Hello, sorry. We also have one here, so please don't exclude them.
Competing mics. I love that.
Mr. Safoev, it's always great to see you as one of our honor speakers. We had the privilege to listen to you in Baku, and if not I think I'm not the only one, but you've impressed so many of us, and it's great that you were a speaker last year, you're a speaker this year, and since Bishkek is hosting CAMCA Forum next year, so on behalf of our team, we can go ahead and invite you to be a part of the CAMCA Forum in Bishkek. So my question goes back to regional cooperation. We discuss and we talk about regional cooperation at all levels. Since some of the participants already mentioned and touched upon some of the points, if you look at Central Asian countries as partners, and just like in business, some partners are better off if they go, just at 2 or 3 of them. And since we have our own challenges as a region with the superpowers, on both sides, yet we have our own challenges internally, we have our own achievements, we have our own possibilities, we have our own issues, politically, economically, etc. But if you look at Central Asia as 5 stans, which stans, in your opinion, would be better off to create a mini version of the European Union or something similar to Benelux, where they would be better off as a union?
Thank you. In the interest of time, Senator, perhaps we take one final question, and then it's all up to you. Yes, go ahead. The microphone, please.
Thank you, Mr. Aslan. I must take this opportunity that my colleague and old friend, Mr. Senator Sodyq Safoev, is here among us. Maybe partly answering the previous question about the interaction of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, I would like to say a few words. As I mentioned in my speech, there are a number of challenges and threats needed to overcome together. One of them is restoring of the Aral Sea tragedy. We know that Uzbekistan is actively contributed to overcome this problem. This problem is being overcome together. We have a very good example. Me and Mr. Safoev, as the heads of the delegation to the OSCPA, initiated a special statement regarding this issue during last summer meeting of the Parliamentary Assembly in Birmingham. It was a very important document that called donor countries to actively take part in this issue. So another one important point is our interaction on the promotion of SDGs in Central Asia. We are trying to work together within the framework of the established interparliamentary platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed for all the questions, comments, and remarks. Senator, you have your hand full.
Thank you. Couple of minutes or more? Because
yes,
very interesting questions.
No, listen, you have 5 minutes and then we'll wrap up.
So, minute for every question. Good.
You're a very skilled politician.
Thank you. Privatization, challenging issue. I think that there's 2 main obstacles for full-fledged privatization. First, legacy of old Soviet-style gigantic combinates, which is very difficult to privatize. Whole cities are binded to one huge combinate, for instance, in Navai or in Almaly. Privatization of them means destabilizing the livelihood of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and it must be done cautiously, and you are quite correct, it should not be handled to the handful of people whom it will be embezzlement of the national asset. Second, absence of real capital. And I think that with the last amendment of the Constitution, when land became a capital, it might be somehow addressed. At least Dr. Soto proved that Rich countries are rich because they have a private ownership on the land, and everything is a capital. So privatization has still a problem. It should be done carefully under the oversight of parliament, so it should not bring more problems. Next, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. There are many old stereotypes and prejudices inherited from the past. You're absolutely correct that we still have the problems, but we should not be afraid of them. To have a problem means that we must find a solution, and solution is development. This is a progress. Frankly, and I'd like to draw your attention to my next statement, I think that the future of Central Asia belongs to the creating of strategic alliance, axis, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, which might be involving Azerbaijan, triangular axis. This is absolutely important politically and economically. And today, the leaders of the countries, President Tokayev, President Mirziyoyev, President Aliyev, are forming that. Last month, I was in Azerbaijan, and President Aliyev told that only country which he visited 3 times within 1 year was Uzbekistan. President Mirziyoyev and Tokayev now working hard, personally, on creating new environment for our strategic partnership. I think it's not only about the Central Asia, the whole environment in Eurasia requires such kind of alliance. And I believe that with together, including civil society, including parliamentarians, involving, engaging them, we might create new atmosphere for the creating strategic alliance with Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and overcome some prejudices of previous time. And Hikmat, you asked about the leadership without the institutions. You're absolutely right. Let me respond in this way. Best leaders create institutions. This is no contradiction. It's like in a football, soccer team. The stars cannot be stars without a team, but team cannot be successful without the stars. So it's a kind of an amalgam or synergy of both. And lastly, about the integration. Now we're a little bit reluctant to tell about the integration. It may be a little bit premature. Why? First, because integration requires shared values, shared principles. Be frank, we don't have it in the Central Asia and South Caucasus. Different countries, different society, different background, different vision and approaches. But slowly, I think that it will come. Now we should talk about the deep cooperation, and it will create the environment for maybe in the future for legal and institutional integration. I think institutionalization is an agenda, and we should work. The first step was done with the, as Aslan Shakirov informed you about the annual summits of consultative summits of the leader of state. We didn't have it before, now we have it. It's already, we're having a result of that. And lastly, I'd like to express my gratitude to the Askar Orazalievich Shakirov, personal friend of mine, and the friend of Uzbekistan, who is today opened up this floor with wonderful statement. Now we're working not only on the cooperation between the governments. It's not enough. We first time this year or last year, or at least this year, in Turkestan, we had a parliamentarian forum of Central Asia. Today, parliamentarians think that we cannot delegate all the issues to the governments. Parliaments are playing more crucial role. Now we're working on the first ever Central Asian Civil Forum involving civil society to our integrational process. And I think that it will be even more effective. All in all, I think that we might be today more optimistic than 5 years ago. And we should give a credit to the new tendencies, reforming processes, but still a lot should be done ahead.
Senator, your Victor Hugo quote and remark unlocked the potential of this room. Many more questions we could have taken. Suffice to say, and I think I speak for all when I say this has been a very insightful, very thought-provoking and spirited discussion and remarks. Can't thank you enough. We of course, on purpose left out the big issue of Ukraine and its ramifications. We will come to that. I'm very pleased to welcome you back here on this very stage for the panel discussion on geopolitical matters. But for the time being, thank you so much for your time, for your remarks, Senator Sodyq Safoev. This is your applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You did a wonderful job. See you in Tashkent.